Washington Governor Bob Ferguson is responding to criticism over his handling of state clemency decisions.
Former Seahawk Doug Baldwin is the vice chair of the Clemency and Pardons Board and accuses the governor of not following board recommendations. KOMO senior reporter Chris Daniels asked the governor about it and joins us now with more. Chris?
Kelly, Molly, this is an issue with strong opinions on all sides. And what Baldwin is saying is that he's frustrated that the governor is not following the unanimous board decisions to commute sentences. Well, now the governor is giving his side of the argument for the first time.
I would be lying to you if I said that that wasn't frustrating. It's very frustrating.
Doug Baldwin says he believes in second chances.
It has affirmed to me that redemption is real.
That's why he agreed to an appointment by Governor Jay Inslee to serve as the vice chair of the state Clemency and Pardons Board. But Baldwin says his frustration is growing after ruling on multiple commutation and pardons cases, like the one of Christopher Havens. Havens was convicted of murdering a man in the Capitol Forest in Thurston County back in 2010 and has since founded the Prison Mathematics Project and was hired by UCLA as a staff research associate. Baldwin was part of a 5-0 board vote to commute Havens' sentence in late 2025, only for Ferguson to reject his release, citing the interests of justice. I asked the governor about the dispute this week. There's been unanimous votes from the board that you have denied. How do you respond to what Doug Baldwin has had to say?
Yeah, I mean, I saw the interview. I thought it would have been fair if we pointed out what those commutations were, so your viewers could put that in perspective. So, for example, one of those 10 that I said no to was for an individual who murdered an individual for racial reasons. Shot 3 times, I believe, an Asian man on the bus, who I think was 72 years old. After earlier that day shooting someone in a grocery store, that person's paralyzed, and shooting another person in that store who thankfully was not harmed. That person has served, I think, about a third of their sentence. Do I think that person should be released now? No, I do not. Do I have a disagreement with the recommendation? Sure. Do I think most people in the state would agree with me if they saw what that request was? Absolutely.
Baldwin says despite his dispute with Ferguson, he has no plans on resigning his position. In fact, he and the rest of the board were back at it today hearing cases, and they'll be back at it again tomorrow hearing other cases as well. Kelly, Molly?
Oh, Chris, what, if anything, are those 10 inmates saying about this?
Well, I did have a chance to talk to Havens today, who is in a state institution. He is an inmate right now, and I talked to him about what happened back in 2010. He expressed remorse, as he did in front of the board, talking about what happened in the Capitol Forest and also what has happened in the 16 years since. He's told me that he doesn't know if he's going to appeal on all of this. He is eligible to get out of prison in early 2030. You'll hear more about his case and what has transpired since coming up after the game here on KOMO.
We'll look forward to that, Chris. Thank you.